right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on Wednesday afternoon. I know it's been already a busy few days, so really excited to see so many faces here. Welcome. So we're talking about how to evaluate and implement AI to drive real revenue impact. And the reason we thought that's an important topic and presentation we should give is because even we get a whole lot of messages about, hey, here's a new AI tool that can solve all of my sales or all of my marketing problems. And I think this applies to pretty much any space right now. And it's actually really hard to distinguish the smoke and mirror from a solution that can actually solve my problems. So what we want to do is actually go a little bit, discuss what's important across pretty much all AI solutions, but very much focus on sales and marketing solutions. And oftentimes it's helpful to go back to the basics. First, to understand what do I actually want an AI solution to do for me, and then how do I figure out if that solution that promises that they're good at this is actually good at it. That's what we're going to talk about today. As we get started, real quick, my name is Christian Kletzel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of UserGems. We are AI sales solution. We've been doing this for many years, so UserGems for the last 6 years. I've been running revenue teams for about 10 years, and we raised 20 million in venture capital. With me is James.
I'm excited that I get to speak now. This isn't working.
Closer.
Come on. Oh, it is? Okay.
Closer.
Do I have to get it? Okay, now I have to get really close. Got it. So James Eaton again, CRO of IP Group. Been doing startups for about 25 years, which means I'm pretty old. Older than Christian, but really kind of specialize in that 5 million to 50 million turnarounds.
And what we wanted to bring today is a little bit the perspective of both sides. So we have someone working on AI sales solutions and someone on the other side actually consuming them, buying them, and evaluating them. And this is a story that I've seen, pretty much any revenue organization I'm talking to, they're hearing we need to 2x this year, but actually with the same headcount. And if this sounds familiar, it certainly is for my team because I said the same thing. And therefore, we need to figure out how we can achieve this in a world where actually sales and marketing is harder than ever. And that's why so many organizations are actively exploring AI agents. And we're seeing organizations are investing billions of dollars over the next 5 years. So we know that people want to use them. We know people will see success, but the question is, how do they achieve, how do they select the solutions and achieve the success? Because despite everyone trying to use AI solutions, we're actually receiving emails like this. And I'm sure you've all received something like this. It's literally in my inbox. So I'm Austrian, I speak German. Somehow they came to Oktoberfest, and Oktoberfest is many things, but it's not a good transition to me buying their software. And I think that's why we're all a little bit jaded about AI. And I think you have a similar...
Yeah, we didn't put up my example, which was 2 weeks ago. Somebody sent me a nice AI-generated email, so they said, that's complimented me on my baldness. So there's nothing like... I know, I responded back, I'm like, I shave my head. I'm not bald, so either way. Yeah. I didn't take their call.
And I think we've all seen the bad examples of AI messaging, so let's make sure we actually arrive at the good examples on how do we get there. And a lot of people say Outbound is dead, but it's really only dead if we do it the old way. And what I mean by old way is, some of you have might seen the statistics, it's from Insight Partners. What it says is that now we need 4 times as many activities as we needed 5 years ago in order to generate a meeting. What this also means is that if I'm doing the same things I did 5 years ago, I'm 25% as efficient. So this means Outbound isn't dead, it's just the old way of doing Outbound is dead, and we need to adopt. And by the way, we're sharing this presentation. Feel free to take pictures, but we also have a QR code to get access to the full one. And so maybe real quick about user gems and where like our expertise comes from. So we are a sales and marketing solution. We've been doing this since 2019. We're working with startups and large organizations of really all sizes. HubSpot is a customer, CrowdStrike, Pinterest, but also startups like Sendoso. We're tracking, we talked about ROI in AI, and for sales, it's always opportunity generation. We've generated close to $1 billion in revenue for customers and $4 billion in pipeline. I hope next time I present this, it's $1 billion and not 950. The way we started out was past champions, which is for us a really, really strong sales signals. So what this means is we get a list of your buyers, you provide the buyers, we track them for job movement, and we let your sales team know if they arrive at a new organization. It's one of the buying signals that works really well. We have found it has a much higher conversion rate than other signals. But if this signal exists, it means there are more signals that work in the sales environment. And signals can be broadly categorized into 3 categories. It's signals on the person level, like, for example, past champions changing their job, but also new hires. They can be on the account level. So we know something like website visits or company fundraising, but also things like if a company is the competitor of my customer, then they have a 2.5x opportunity rate. If I mentioned this in an email, we analyzed 1.5 million opportunities to come to this. So this means there are things I can and should do in order to increase my meeting rate. And that's exactly what we have to do in order to achieve the same success we did 5 years with just general outbound. And then the last category is my own data. I have so much history about the opportunities, the companies I've been in touch with, and all of this information should be analyzed and can very well be analyzed with AI. The thing is, this is actually really hard for humans. Like we're always asking reps to, by the way, do one more thing. But we're forgetting that we already asked them to do 18 things. So it's the 19th thing. And we know that like humans can focus on like 3 to 5 things at most, which means a lot of these signals are missed. But that's actually something where AI is really good at. Taking a whole lot of information, analyzing it, prioritizing, generating meaning. So we're seeing a lot of opportunity to all the data that we already have. Oftentimes, it's in my Salesforce, in my user data, in my marketing automation. A lot of this data can now be used with AI.
Yeah, this is definitely my slide. So it's for everybody who runs sales teams, or even this is like a net new hire, this is a typical day, right? Especially if you hire like good enterprise AEs. The best AEs or SDRs I've always hired are the ones that really have great control of their pipeline, right? So, but you know, if you're spending 6-figure base on a salesperson and for the first 6 or 9 months building out their pipeline, this is how they're spending their day, that's not a great use of their time or the budget for that. What we've seen mostly, or most lately, is that these AI vendors are, you know, focusing on the draft sequence, as illustrated by my terrible email that I got and received about being bald, or that, you know, Christian got about practicing Oktoberfest, which doesn't even make sense. This, at least my opinion, and I think UserGem's opinion, is what we should be focusing on, which is really, you know, 60% of the day right there, which is, I think salespeople can do a good job with given the right tools, but they still don't, they can build a list based on your ICP, but they don't know how to prioritize. They don't do A/B testing on emails, so they'll send out a number of different emails, usually focusing on like one signal, which is not what you should be doing. Okay, and then it's on this one, this is the way we see it. So really from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., we should be focusing on selling and letting, you know, the AI take advantage of the building the list, prioritizing, and doing the draft sequences and whatnot.
Yeah. We strongly believe that there is a human element in selling. I think right now we're seeing the whole spectrum, even upstairs of organizations. Some say hire no more humans. We strongly believe that we actually think you should hire more humans as long as they're more efficient and can achieve your results. Like as an example, before we used, like we started using our own AI about 6 months ago. Before that, our SDRs achieved 9 meetings a month per person. Now we're at 20 meetings a month. And that makes scaling that team much, much easier. And the way we achieve this is by making them, allowing them to focus on the human element. That means sending the right messages, calling them, interacting on LinkedIn, interacting on Twitter. Wherever your buyer is, you need to give the seller time to be the human. And when we can achieve that, then AI can be the revenue multiplier. So if you, for example, if you have an SDR and AE organization, we have found that typically a ratio is 1-to-1, 1-to-2. I think you're seeing this in your organizations.
Yeah, I mean, what we have found is that it's more like 1-to-3, 1-to-4. So we can focus our budget in the right place and not always think that increasing pipeline means going and hiring more SDRs and BDRs.
And then that's just so the segue to AI. Like, we're seeing a lot of projects being abandoned, and we're seeing a lot of solutions being tried. I'm actually surprised the number is only 30%. I'm hearing more. And that means for us, as we're evaluating AI, and I can, like, everyone I talk to, there's absolutely the push from the top to use AI in the processes. I mean, we're talking sales and marketing, but that's across every department. So we need to figure out how to run the right project. So how, in this sea of solutions that exist, how can we identify the diamonds in the dust? And so we're going to go deeper into some of these aspects. Like, as you're evaluating AI for go-to-market, some of these elements actually apply across the board, regardless of whether it's in go-to-market or not. Like, it's important to, similar to what we just did when we analyzed the day of a seller, it's important to understand where are actually my inefficiencies and my inconsistencies, because that's where I then want to use AI to optimize these elements. I need to have an ROI. I need to understand, if I use AI in this, what's my ROI? Where am I getting my money back for this? And then there's always the same about implementation, as well as then transparency and regulatory changes. We won't go too much into detail. These are elements that apply for every AI implementation. What we want to focus on is, in your go-to-market solution, how to select the right solution, and what we've seen across many organizations that matters in the selection process. And we'll explain every detail, but for us, there is 5 important elements. It's data accuracy, and I'll go into detail why I believe it's the foundation. Then it's the understanding of the context. The AI needs to understand who you are, and then the AI needs to have different skill sets. You need to be able to control it because AI has its own mind, and you need to make sure it does what you want. And then ultimately, depending on your organization, whether you're a startup or an enterprise, you have different go-to-market motions, and it needs to fit in there.
So, data accuracy. If anybody's ever moved from like Pipedrive to Salesforce or Zoho, I'm not saying anything bad about those platforms, but if you ever moved and did a migration from X to X, it's garbage in, garbage out. That is what you're expecting your salespeople to call upon, right? So data enrichment, data accuracy is incredibly important, especially when building pipeline in that go-to-market function. It's, for me, if you have that bad data, you're expecting your people to call on, contacts that aren't even at the same company anymore. Maybe it's the wrong email address. Maybe you're just getting massive bounce rate. It's a massive opportunity for you to be better and to drive pipeline in that manner. But I also think it offers an opportunity to do more hyper-personalization, right? Like, we shouldn't be reaching out to one person about one little trigger or buying sign. It should be multiple. And that's kind of where the data accuracy comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in combination with AI, a lot of leaders I talk to, they say data accuracy is actually now more important than before, because we already know AI hallucinates here and there. If you then add untrustworthy data into the mix, suddenly you have way too much variability. And I talked to a person today who said, like, he tested a few solutions, I think it was in coding, and for them, it was like they were 70% good. But 70% wasn't good enough for him because he still had to double check everything. So there's a bar that you need to fulfill where your people start to trust the solution. And the trust is required, A, for the adoption that you need across the team. And B, if you want to put certain elements on autopilot, you need to trust that the foundational layer, which is the layer which everything is built on, that this layer is accurate. And so when we talk data accuracy, it's two things. It's first for your industry, for your company. When you look at the data sources, how complete is this information? How much information do they have for your vertical? We're talking about account information, size, location, industry, tech stack, etc. And we're talking about contact level information. We're talking about how accurate is the information that they're providing. We know people change on average every 3 to 4 years, which means on average, my data gets outdated by like 20-25% every year. So we need to make sure that the data sources are updated regularly, or my data is automatically outdated. And this is applying to both like account level signals, account level data, but also signals. Once again, coming back, what we found is that AI is really strong if it don't only use account or contact data, but the signals, both for selecting and then for the messaging. And we'll show that in a second. So as a company, we're doing a lot of data tests for our customers. So we're really, really big on the data quality as the foundation. When we run the past champion or past relationships playbook, it's all about how many job changes do we find for you. And for us, we invested so much in this that we'd never lose a data test because we think it's the most important thing we can do. And James has some experience.
Yeah, well, I'm not only a speaker today, I've also purchased user gems at my last company, massive ROI. But I mean, I think we found, we had 52x ROI from this. My company sold into manufacturing from a plant level changes jobs every 6 months. So tracking those signals and using this to go and chase after the right pipeline and having an enterprise sales team actually using this solution was a massive win for our organization.
And so once we've got the data right as the most important foundation of this play, one more thing to add there, like there's also solutions a lot that do waterfall data. So once again, you always need to go back and understand where's an organization coming from, where they're getting their data from to understand how accurate it is. Because really accuracy is it changes how people ultimately adopt the product. Waterfall solutions, they often use several APIs and vendors to get information from. And we've seen companies need to be cautious about this because it often means I'm getting correct and bad data from several vendors. Similarly here, like we're very focused on new hires. So once again, you need to go to which signals work for me, where do I get the data from? For us, a really big one is new hires, promotions. These are people that have budget. They want to make an impact. A new VP, a new C-level, they need to change the organization. So you want to be in there early. There's a statistic that says if you're the first vendor to get in touch and you fulfill the criteria, you win 76% of time. So timing really, really matters. Because if you're the second or third solution, it's an uphill battle for you. All right. With the data, then it's about understanding who you are as an organization. And that's for AI to understand you. And I think the easiest way to explain this is, how would you educate a new seller joining your company in who you are? What is your ICP? Who are you selling to? What's the persona? And specifically, what are their pain points and how are you solving it? So basically, think about the trainings a new seller goes through to understand the product, to understand the buyer, to understand their needs. The same thing the AI needs to go through as well. So you need to, when you're starting a new project, you need to make sure that there's a lot of opportunity for you to enter information around your customers, around your targets, around who you're selling to. And then more and more, it gets really important to understand also the history. Like you want to understand, who have I been in touch with in the past? And maybe what were the pain points we discussed with this organization or with this individual? Because that's information a really good seller uses in the outreach. And that's where AI can also come in, take all of this information and influence who to reach out to and the messaging. I'm going to show a quick demo how we think about this. So for user terms, we think there is a lot of information and knowledge already in your CRM. So what we are doing is we connect to your CRM, in this case, for example, Salesforce, and we look at your closed won opportunity contacts. Usually they're very good way to see who is your right person. So we go into your closed won op context, we can look open up or even closed lost. And the idea is, using that information, help me create a persona. Because ultimately, persona means who are the people with the right titles that I should be going after. So in this case, we're looking at, based on whoever is in my opportunity contacts, we've identified the titles that matter to them so we can prioritize people based on the persona. Then in the second step, we look at who are actually your customers and your open ops. And there are, who are your customers and your open ops? And there are several criteria that we look at to understand what is actually a really good customer for you. So we would look into size of the company, and we compare it to, like, typically we hear, like, our target group is like 500 to 5,000 employees. We can look into your current customers. Which buckets do they actually fall into? What's their industry? What's their regions? But then we even go further because we have information around from like 4 million companies with the idea of what are other signals that are relevant to my customers? Like, for example, if someone received funding, or if someone's hiring for a specific role, or if they specifically have a sales team or CS team. So we look at all the criteria to understand who are my target customers. And based on this, we're creating a score of how relevant is this company. And the important thing here is that if an AI solution doesn't focus on getting the first step right, so that step about which accounts to contact and then which people to contact, then the very best messaging isn't helping you. You can generate the very best messaging. If you reach the wrong person, you will not be successful. So you really need to make sure you get the step right. It's the most important step, getting right. Who are you contacting? I'll show that later. And then ultimately, you're getting a list of companies and then people with the right title within those companies. And it's interesting because when we think AI, we think messaging. But the messaging will be built on the signals we identify in the people. But first, we need to get the people and the accounts right. Going back to the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, this was my slide. So it's, I don't know if you operate or manage a sales team or anything like that. For me, and when I will go and look at when we were, I guess, not remote, looking and watching my salespeople switch between 18 tabs, right? It's like they start their day maybe in an intranet, they look at Zoom info, they're looking at, a CPQ system, maybe they're using an ROI system, whatever that is. That's all they're using Apollo, they're going into Salesforce or HubSpot. It's just like a massive proliferation of data that's hitting your sales team or your SDRs, and they're not focused. They're just not focused. They're probably only spending 2 hours of their day actually doing their job versus, having a solution that just feeds all that data to them and where they can be very actionable on that data.
And that's really where AI can make the biggest impact. Not on the last step of executing all the human elements, all the human steps, but rather on the steps of creating the lists, creating the accounts and prospects. And if we look at, ultimately, we look at skill set, we look at what should AI be doing for me, always go back into what are actually the uniquely human elements that I want a seller to do for me. And there are certainly things that I will never give up on the prospecting part. Like I never give up on the discovery part of a call. This is exactly human. There are solutions, I tried them where AI is doing discovery and it didn't feel right, answering like very deep questions. That's what I do with a human. And then talking about controllability, I talked to a marketing leader at a large organization, and they said they have very strict guidelines in how sellers should communicate their value. And they're very scared because AI can take this and create messaging that doesn't apply to their brand guidelines, that doesn't utilize them. So as you're evaluating solutions, it's very important to understand what can I actually influence here on the messaging. And so when you look at guardrails, the way like our system, based on our experience, what we find where AI doesn't shine is if you just give AI all the information and say, go write my emails, go write my phone script. It has too much variability. It doesn't sound human enough. Where we found AI is really good at is if we give them guardrails in terms of we have email templates where certain elements based on signals are being replaced by AI. And then you have a human-sounding message, but that includes all of the signals that apply to an individual. Either all of them or some of them, or if none apply, that's also okay. But the idea is I can give AI all the signals, and it figures out which ones to use. Because really what we don't want is that AI is this black box, where we give him some input, it gives you some output, but at the end of the day, I'm always wondering, like, why did you select this? And once again, this goes back to trust. If I don't know how the output was generated, then I also really have a hard time trusting the output.
Yeah, so I mean, these are some of the signals that we use at former orgs and whatnot. So I know that we've already hit on the past customers. I think the website visits is always important, especially it kind of depends on what you're selling into. Funding, like Christian said, is incredibly important. Anecdotally, we, using user gems, found a CMO that left 3M, went to a different company, and we reached out to them pretty much immediately through the AI prompt that told us to at the right time. And our messaging hit. And that was the first kind of 6-7-figure deal that we ever closed. And that was massive. If we hadn't used those signals to go and engage, like, hey, remember us, we sold you into you at 3M, you were a decision maker, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it would have just gone away. Like, salespeople just aren't that in tune with the business to go and do that on their own. Yeah. At least my sales team.
I think it's pretty much every sales team. The way we see this right now, we're seeing a lot of workflows that act on individual signals. Like, if this signal happens, write this email. If this does, write this email. What we tried before utilizing AI is creating a whole lot of different workflows. Like, if this and this, but not this, write the following. If this, but this and not this, write the following. We generated like 35 workflows, and then we got the person generating them got overwhelmed, and the sellers also got overwhelmed. That's where the beauty of AI comes in, where you don't have to do all this if-then workflows, but rather you give AI all the information, and it creates really good messaging. And we think about it in like 4 different types. Like, there's customization based on the contact and the relationship. So it's a past customer, a referral, maybe an engagement with your company already through a webinar. Then there's information on the company level, something that's relevant, like the funding. We like core messaging, where these are very easy examples, but based on the persona of the person, I have the pain points, and AI can really identify the persona, grab the typical pain points of this persona, add how we can help them, and really personalize simply based on the title. Another example that I really like, that I think everyone I talk to loves, is we have so many case studies, and we always tell our sellers, hey, please, like, find a relevant case study and put it in. And they probably have about 3 case studies they reuse all the time. With AI, we can just give them the list of all the case studies and the companies, and it can automatically select the best case study based on company size, location, industry. And what we need to think about is what more and more content do we have, where until now, it was too difficult for an individual person to personalize. Another one that I really like is content suggestions. If someone interacted with my content, based on who they are and based on what they consumed for content, I can suggest the next one automatically using AI. So the idea is really that every single data point will get used by AI and every single email personalized. Yes, I think. I love it. So the question is whether if we have a lot of information, a lot of signals about a person, how do we actually should reach out? Like focus on the most important one or slam everything into an email, which I think an if-then would do. So absolutely, so great transition, I think. So the way we think about this is actually think holistically about the messaging. And we know certain signals work better than others. So we start, we have typically, in one email, we have about 2 to 3 AI touch points. And if, for example, if 5 or 6 signals apply to a person, then we save it for the next email or the email afterwards. It's absolutely, we don't, like, people do not like to read. Like, don't make a long email. Like, if you add a case study and a persona-related pain point, then we're pretty much already at the limit of what should be in an email. Maybe a quick reference in like, hey, we interacted 18 months ago. So yeah, be very careful about how to split it up. And so here's an example of how we, like the signals that we are using, and you see it in here through a little bit color-coded. The idea is also that not only can we use signals like, hey, this person was a previous close lost, auto-identified through my AI, but also we can sprinkle it in through several emails. Both, I really like actually in the second email, checking in about information from the first email. That's what a really good seller would do, and that's also what we can instruct AI to do for us. And then this step 2 is actually then where we talk about like the human element of selling. What we ultimately want to get to is that we help prepare all the information. We prepare the messaging, like we prepare the people, we prepare the messaging, we can prepare the call script in order to give the sellers more time to like send the emails, call them, have the LinkedIn interactions. So really we should use AI in order to enable the second step.
Yeah, I mean, does that answer your question? Okay.
And last slide, and then we can open up for question if we have. What we found is that just any organization, whether it's enterprise or even startups, they're set up a little bit differently. Based on which tools you're using, is it HubSpot, is it Salesforce, is it an external tool, based on your team structure, whether you're AE, like new business or upsell expansion, the territories. And so you need to make sure, based on your organizational structure, can a system support that? Can they support my existing tech stack? Can they support the way I'm doing business? Because right now we're also seeing kind of like 2 different types. One is where it's kind of like a shadow system that runs in the background, which can also be okay for, let's say, certain accounts. Like if for tier 2, if you're never getting in touch with them, there could be a shadow system that just emails them. But the idea is oftentimes, I want this fully integrated into my system. I want to make sure that whatever AI does, I also know about it in all my other outreaches. I have it locked. And so you need to make sure that does the vendor support all of my tools? And then lastly, I think when it comes to AI right now, where we see a new startup pop up every week, it's like, are they already battle tested, or will I be the battleground where they're running through all the errors that they can find? All right, with that, I'll keep this up. If you want to download the presentation, I think it will also be shared. But questions now, please. Yes, very good question around, like, once again, coming back to trust, I think probably the most important word in AI. And how can you make sure that companies trust the autopilot that I'm setting up? And I'm 2 things here. For me, there's a co-pilot and there's an autopilot. A co-pilot for me is everything is getting prepared, including like the people, including the messaging. But then I have my seller look over it. And oftentimes we run Copilot for, let's say, for your tier 1 accounts, for the VP and the C-level, for like very, very strong ICP and persona fit, we suggest a Copilot. And the Copilot is then also the testing ground for my autopilot. And so this means we recommend always starting with the Copilot, have your sellers review. There's always a feedback period on persona, on target, like the things that get automatically detected, and then on messaging. You also learn what works, what doesn't. That's where the co-pilot phase comes in, which then enables the autopilot phase. But typically we see it takes somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks to set up right for your persona. Then the next 4 weeks, you run the co-pilot, and after that, you can start the autopilot, which enables a lot of plays. Like I'm a big fan for thinking about it in terms of campaigns, where like marketing is already running campaigns. Sales using AI can also run campaigns. And the more I can not think about them, the better. And that's the autopilot motion.
I'll take a stab at it, but it's, that's always been like the biggest challenge in go-to-market teams. Like if a salesperson sent out a great email, are they sharing it across usually not, right? They're going to take all the credit and whatnot. So I think we've tried to drive that behavior a little bit more, sometimes incentive-based, sometimes just like, hey, this is why companies thrive. You're a shareholder maybe in this company. This is why I do it. So we maybe factor in on the human emotion side. But you're right. We have to work with marketing more. Usually that messaging component always came from marketing, yet they're not the tip of the spear, right? They're not on the phone with customers, and that's when you have the Hatfield-McCoy type of relationship. But, for us, with the assortment of AI tools that we did use, we really focused on that and did a more probably auditing on the back end. So if we did see opportunities move through the sales cycle, why? And so we're constantly going back, refreshing, auditing that content, and then sharing it with either our AI applications or just across the enterprise.
Yeah. When we start an engagement, my first question is always actually not to sales, but to marketing. Because it's like, we want to understand who your buyers are. So I'm sure your product marketing has a lot of templates or presentations around your buyer. That actually we then translate as the input into the AI model. Like literally, like we ask for presentations. AI does actually then a good job in taking the content of the presentation, putting it in a format where it then can be used. So the idea is really, marketing has a whole lot of content that's really useful for sales. Let's make sure we get this in the training. And then ongoing evaluation improvement. Yeah.
Real tactical secondary question. How does this play with HubSpot and Salesforce? Is it integrated at all?
Yeah, we are fully integrated into HubSpot, Salesforce, both reading and writing. So the idea is we can write emails back into your Salesforce or your Outreach or your SalesLoft. Like we want to be where your sellers are. Yeah, at the moment we actually don't have our own delivery engine, but rather we integrate into whatever your system is currently using, which is typically Outreach, SalesLoft, Gong, Clarigroove. So there are a few solutions there, but we also integrate into like a Smart Lead, Instant Lead, which also help with delivery.
I think we were up and running in 2 weeks, and we're like actionable. Like the sales team's using it. We're getting actionable data in 2 weeks, which is pretty good for a SaaS application.
Yes. So how is this different than Clay? If people are familiar with Clay, it's a very versatile tool that allows me to like manipulate data in kind of like an Excel kind of way, attached to a lot of APIs. The way I would describe it is like there's two big differences. And I would say if you like Clay is you build everything in your own tables, which allows you to be very creative and do a whole lot of things, but it also means you need to implement every single step yourself. And it's a little bit like if you want to create an e-commerce website, you can also create your own cart, your own checkout, your own newsletter, or you go on Shopify and get Shopify. And we have identified, like we've used all these years of experience to figure out how do we identify the perfect persona? How do we identify the right ICP for you? How do we identify whether this is a new hire that matters or not? And how can we integrate all of these signals into one platform? The way our customers are using it is, I actually like Clay as a way of like, let me quickly test an idea. Is this something that could work for me? And if yes, then I actually go to a sophisticated platform that supports a broader, like all the people I need, all the processes I need, and then implement it as a workflow in user terms. All right, then I think we'll come to the end. Thank you so much for the great questions and for joining.